Are you okay with that noise and stuff? It's all very natural, it's nice breeze.
Yeah. I'm not worried.
When we were talking yesterday, you were talking about the war cries, all those different songs and ditties. And what I thought we'd do is we'd start by...
You know I can't sing.
You can, you were singing yesterday.
Yeah. I can't sing, I can sing it, but I can't sing.
Yeah, but you can sing... No,
You want me to sing it now?
yeah, because they're cries, they're sort of anthems.
Okay, this is one of... When we're on our way to work and confronted by some jerk who has some obscene quirk he must display, we can't help but want to kill. No, we can't help but think this guy's ill and can't help but want to kill every other sucker that's getting in our way. They whistle at us like dogs and make noises at us like hogs. They've got a problem, we agree, but they're problems we can't solve, 'cause our sanity's involved, and we're tired of fuckers fucking over me. That's it. What are you laughing at?
I'm not laughing.
Wonderful.
That's beautiful. I just, what I do is after you've done something, I usually just pause. So it's an interview technique where
Alright.
you've said something. I'm not laughing, I'm just actually pausing. It just, in terms of post-production, allows us a bit of space. And also see where you go, because you can just prattle on. I don't have to ask you questions.
Yeah.
That song, what was that one about?
That song was one of the many, actually, that we used in our marches in the early days, in the early 70s in Sydney. And like the women that were involved in the early days of Sydney, when I first arrived in Sydney in end of 1973, middle 1973, and it took us about 7 months before we figured out where everybody was, and we were really young. And the only pub that was available that was mixed was Cricketer's Arms in Foveaux Street in Surrey Hills, and the girls used to go in the ladies' parlour, and the boys were in the big bar. And they did look exactly like the Qantas stewards with the big modes and the flares. They did. They looked exactly like it. And
The
it was
guys?
yeah, the guys. And it was the only safe place they had. The moment they stepped out of there, they got bashed. The bashing in those years was shocking in Sydney. Absolutely shocking.
In Surrey Hills?
Yeah. Oh, anywhere, because the wall was there beside the old hospice. The beat wall used to be along there. I used to work in hospice and used to yell out and make them cups of tea at night time and do all sorts of mad shit. But, and then if you had money, you used to go to the Clock Theatre restaurant in Crown Street afterwards, and there was a lot of queens used to perform there. And I only had been there, I think, about 4 times when Dawn O'Donnell announced that Ruby's, the first dive bar, would open the next weekend in Crown Street. And yeah, that was the first dive bar, or disco. And it was a great disco. It had the floor that flashed, just like you see in the movies. It was great.
And the one in Surrey Hills, the first one you went to, tell me about that.
Arms.
The Cricketer's Arms. Tell me about the Cricketer's Arms and what happened there, and the sort of women that went there, and how you met, how you talked, what you did, what music was playing.
I can't remember the music, but I mean, we were totally into Joan Armour trading in those days. But and I don't even think the girls' bar had any music. In fact, if I remember rightly, it's very little. It's only small, and we were only talking about like from that wall and the bars there and the tables. The girls' area was very small, and that's where I first met the bike parks. And my 2 girlfriends, Hazel and Christine at the time, they more was drawn to the bar dyke sort of scene, you know, where I went off and bought a motorbike and got far more involved and in the more radical side of the lesbian culture down in Sydney. And that was the side that got and took up arms far, you know, it was a bit early within fighting for everything from Elsie's Women's Refuge, rape crisis, incest house, and rights for everybody, basically. And that, we did that right through the 70s, right through the 80s. I went to the Women's Land in the 80s and lived there.
Okay. And then Ruby's open. Tell me about Ruby's.
Oh, Ruby's was amazing. It was amazing. It was unbelievable when you think about it. There was only one entrance and one exit. We'll talk about fire. And it was on the left-hand side as you head towards down, on the left-hand side of Crown Street, just before Oxford Street, and down from Crown Street Hospital. And it was great. It was an amazing thing to have your own place. And I don't know, we used to get in there, the bike dogs used to always have down the other end of the bar, right down, there was 2 bars, one down one end, one down the other. And we used to sneak alcohol in our helmets. We were bad girls.
And what? Tell me about
And Erica used to be the bouncer. She still works for Event Guardians now for us, the Tropical Fruits events actually, Erica.
And bad girls, what does that mean? What did that mean?
The bad girls? Oh, well, we were feral. We were very radical. We used to, I don't know whether I can say this on film, we used to go up on our bikes up Oxford Street to William Street, and we used to stone saffron shops, sex shops and all sorts of things.
Because?
The feminism was starting to, come in then, and it was this whole army, the war against, which I think got confused. I believe now that us pushing for our rights as lesbians to have a space in the world got very mixed up with the rights and the oppression of women in general in the world. And it didn't seem that we could pick our arms for us without picking up arms for everybody else, basically. I always describe it as like we were like puppies at first, with no one to tell us what to do. We were feral, we had no older women telling us what to do. And then it was like a collective consciousness awareness as we all came together, and it happened not just in Australia, it happened with every lesbian group across Western affected countries. And it was like the coming together of the feminine, the awareness of that instinctive feminine awareness of nurturing and blah blah blah, that led us so easily down that road. And it wasn't like anyone pushed us, we went very willingly down there. And I believe it was the breaking out of us as lesbian women anyway, but we did get very tied up for many years. And I'm not saying it's a negative thing that what we did, but lesbians didn't necessarily benefit radically. Health-wise we did, with health mammograms and all of the stimulation towards much more awareness of health. But as far as getting them to understand us as who we are, they still think we're just women who have sex with women. Like they don't understand our sexuality. Not really, I don't believe. Not even now.
Can you just describe, okay, we're going back to Ruby's, if you can describe the year that it was, and also describe some of the women, the looks, what sort of things happened, what the bad girls did, and what the other girls did.
The looks, jeans, bib and brace overalls, green army disposable bib and brace overalls were very big in those days. And also money was very short in those days. When women were in the early 70s still couldn't go and get a house loan without their husband's permission. So financially we were very, very, strapped for cash. I think you would find that lesbians were one of the major groups that started food co-ops in Sydney through the 70s. That was the only way we could live. How we were dressed, bib and brace overalls, and we used to wear, and they're all out of fashion now, the shirts that had stud buttons. And that was the days we didn't even have the bras and the boobies all stood up. And that was sort of more out strutting your stuff, but mostly bib and brace overalls, leather jackets, boots, Blundstone boots. Now they're very fashionable, but in those days they were what you got from the army disposal store.
And the good girls?
The good girls? The good girls were dykes on Friday and Saturday night at Ruby's, but disappeared into the world and became mergers through the rest of the time. I mean, it was very difficult in those days. Very difficult. I mean, women's stories, there's books and books to be had on women's coming out stories. I was very lucky. My family's never had a problem with me, and I've never been heterosexual. I've been out all my life, as far as my pubescence and sexual involvement goes. But, I've heard stories of women, horrendous, been, out the door, never be seen again. So, like gay people are excommunicated often twice by society as well as their biological family. This is why I think our family in Tropical Fruits is so important. It gives a sense of belonging.
And a sense of place.
Sense of place, yeah. Sense of belonging.
Ruby's, Ruby's was also the first female dedicated space.
It was. It was the first dyke bar, dyke disco in Sydney. They tried to start another one, I think it was in Bondi Junction at the same time, but it got burnt down a bit after Ruby started. I went there one night, it was a very nice place, but it did get burnt down by the next weekend.
Sounds sus.
There was definitely. There was definite control, and still is, I believe, of our spaces. And like this is something like with Trompos that is such an amazing thing because it's ours, and I'm so camera shy sponsors.
The other thing is, if you can describe in quite a bit of detail, what the year that this happened, and to find the Oxford Street precinct, to find what was going on the streets and the pubs, the venues, who owned things, what happened, what was going on, what the police were doing, just a picture of that time.
I was very involved in those days in the very radical side of the lesbian feminist movement. In those days we didn't do a lot of coalition with the boys. I never went near a boys' club in all those years. We used to run dances, International Women's Days dances, Rubies, of course. And then there was, I'm trying to think of the street, and all I can remember her face, it's clear, and I can't remember her name. If I could ring AJ, she'd tell me in 2 minutes. And there was a pub, I'm trying to think of it, we used to go there a lot. And then she got murdered, actually, the woman who owned that pub. I should have done some homework.
That's okay. This is stuff we can pick up on.
Yeah. And we went there for quite some time through the mid to late 70s as well. And then another Cricketers Arms opened, but it's the Cricketers Arms in Alexandria opened for a while there too. And there was a pub down on Broadway we used to do. It was around Rocky Horror Show, because I can remember them. You used to do the shows there, and that was all female place. But definitely Ruby's was in its own for quite some years. This was like 75, 76, 77. Around 77, 78, that's when some of the other pubs started to come to the surface.
International Women's Day in 1975. What sort of...
Oh, feral. We used to destroy the Queensland Tourist Bureau every time. I can remember one year this red sports car, he thought he was going to just drive right through the march, and they just literally ripped his wipers off, kicked his doors, you know, like the police actually had to come in and get him out. It was very, I mean, the police would throw us in the paddy wagon down Darlinghurst. It was very, they didn't know what to do with us, you know, like they had never, this was after the war, women had worked hard in factories in the war, boys had come after the war, the women had gone immediately back to their houses. And the next minute, in the late 60s, when they, you know, a decade, 15 years after the war, or whatever it is, 20 years after the war, they've got these women behaving in a way that they'd never, ever had to deal with. They just didn't know what to do with us. And it wasn't like they had anyone that they could pressure us with. We were feral, we were nobody's children. Who owned us? Nobody.
You couldn't do any pigeonhole?
No, nobody owned us. They had no way of stopping us doing what we were doing. It was like, talk about out of the cupboard into the street. And I mean, you know, there was women, amazing. I mean, I've met some, and still know some amazing strong women, and women who dedicated hours and hours and hours setting up and writing out submissions for government funding for LC's rape crisis. It's all lesbian women. The majority of lesbian women did this. And learning, I mean, it was all a big learning curve. I can remember, I'm a nurse, I've been registered and trained in New Zealand for many, many years. Since I was 16 I started nursing. And I can remember in Sydney going to the university and trying to get a motorbike apprenticeship mechanic, and I had to get someone to employ me before I could do the course. Even though I was prepared to pay for the course, I still couldn't do the course until someone employed me. And I remember going to an interview after ringing up and you know, applying for a job. And I walked in the door and he said, "You're a girl." I went, "Yeah." And that was it. That's as far as I got it. You know, like, yeah, we used to fix our bikes. We used to do all our own chains and, you know, not our tablets and stuff, but we used to do a lot of our own maintenance on our bikes.
And bikes and dykes, what did that become? Dykes on bikes.
Dykes on bikes. Well, it's sort of, in those days, we used to go on runs. We went a big run in Tasmania. It was 3 months. We went a big Tasmania. We used to go on weekend runs. And when I left Sydney in the early 80s and went and lived on the women's land, and I could get hold of Schmenet and find out that how they set up the Dykes on Bikes that is now. But we didn't have an association or anything like that. We just was Sydney Dykes, and we used to call ourselves the O'Dykes actually. And there was another group of women, Monty O'Wheel, Sally Jackson, and then Monty O'Wheel barricaded herself in Sydney Uni to get women's studies, and they moved down to Tasmania and bought women's land. They're still there, and they changed their name of the bike to the O'Wheels because they used to ride push bikes, and they were the O'Wheels and we were the O'Dykes, and that's what we used to sign our names, O'Dyke.
And why Odai?
Oh, I don't know, you know, because it was claiming dyke, it was claiming the word back. I mean, you know, it was around the same time black people were claiming the word black back as yeah, if we claim it, you can't do anything with us. You know, there's that famous statement, someone said, she's not a woman, she's a dyke. Yeah, and that's...
And can you describe the political climate at the time, because there was this coalition, I mean, even just go backtrack a bit before the sort of separation, if you like, of women becoming involved in feminism. Your earliest experiences, like from 73, like in those years when you were just first involved, if you can talk about what the sort of political climate was.
For myself personally, it was very, the group in Sydney was very small as far as the gay community that was out, and I think it was like we were sort of just really discovering ourselves and discovering each other. And in those early years, I mean, I was very much immersed totally within the lesbian culture. It was very easy to do. When you detach yourself from mainstream, you live under nobody else's rules, you know, and it was very easy for us to do what we did. We just ignored everything, you know. I worked, there was a few of us worked, but that was like there, and this is where we lived, and it's like finding a beautiful swimming pool after you've been in the desert forever. It wasn't something, you know, like it was like finding your mob, and we were like totally there. We were very promiscuous in those first, before the doctrine of feminism came along. We were I had 2 girlfriends, you know, like things were a bit different. That all seemed to radically come to a halt when the spears and the shields came up, and we all went to war for all sorts of causes. And that continued right on through the late 70s, right through the 80s, into the 90s. I moved to the women's land then, and after that we did Coburn Sound, Pine Gap, Camp, and the Women for Survival. We became very political. I've noticed, say for example, in the last 8-9 years, going down to Sydney and stuff, and I feel like a very proud auntie, that the young lesbian women are far more in their culture, claiming their culture. This, you notice, I don't know whether you've noticed in Lottle that there's been a lot more articles about butch and femme, and young dykes actually feeling very comfortable saying, look, I'm butch and I prefer you to refer to me as he. You know, I feel very happy in my heart, I suppose, that we've come back full circle and that we are looking at ourselves as a developing culture, because I believe that. I believe that when we came out in the late 60s, mid-60s, around the sexual revolution in Vietnam, that it was like they didn't watch the door and out we came, they were all too busy fighting with themselves. And that from that point, even though there's been times in the past with George Sand and, you know, the Bohemian time, where gay people were socially accepted, in the overall working class gay people, for example, and I think this is what came out with the dykes. It was a very working class, I mean, I'm not saying there wasn't, and I don't mean to be classist either, but the majority of women in those early 70s, late 60s, early 70s, we were very working class. And I think that also contributed to the ferocity that we came out with.
Angry women.
Yeah, angry women, that's it. We've had enough now, we're out. And I believe that it's only since then that we've really been in the sunshine like a plant, our whole culture developing, and look how beautiful we've become. And you know, well, not what we've become, we always were, but do you know what I mean? Like, we've been allowed to develop in the sunshine, and look what we're producing, you know? That
brings me to my next question. When was the first time you recall, personally, of seeing a whole bunch of dykes and puffs in daylight, in the day hours?
In the day hours.
As opposed to being creatures of the night.
Mardi Gras. We did used to have pufters come, some that used to come on the International Women's Days marches. Women I've seen on the International Women's Days marches and the marches we did and protests. Blackout the Festival night, we took Anita on for a long time there.
Anita Bryant?
Yeah. One time a whole group of us, they had this big rally in Town Hall, and it was just lucky that it was raining. And we painted Blackout the Festival light right across these black umbrellas. And so we had the umbrellas closed when we went into the meeting, all dressed really sedate, took off our jackets and turned around and opened up the umbrellas and just black out the whole crowd with this blackout. It was very good. Yeah. We used to play in some very good political moves.
What was that meeting? What was that?
It was just Anita Bryant. Let's get rid of the gays and abortion and, you know. Bronwyn Bishops referred to us as hairy scrubbers. Get these hairy scrubbers. We did a women's camp at Parliament House, the old Parliament House. We camped there for about 3 weeks. I've got a big drum at home. We used to drum daily. We carry the big drum and drum it right through Parliament House daily, and then around the outside. Freak them out a bit.
So politically, what were the sort of marches that were happening there? Was the women's marches?
International Women's Day was a big one. Reclaim the Night. Anzac Day, we used to march and remembrance of women and children raped in war. And that used to get us into a lot of trouble. A lot of trouble, you know. I mean, I'm talking about being spat at, abused. The cops used to abuse us. Call us everything under the sun, you know, sluts, cunts, you know, you dirty, filthy, hairy, you name it. They would just stand there and abuse us. But we didn't give a shit. It was like fuel to the fire. The more they abused us, you know. When we all got arrested in, I can't remember, Pine Gap or Coburn Sound, we all just said we were carrying silkwood. And they had about 300 carrying silkwoods in the jails, and a hotter day than this, I can assure you. And, I mean, you know, determined women can be a force to be reckoned with, I can tell you. Especially when they don't have any control over you. Ultimately, they have no power. They can hurt us, but what can they do to us? You know, we've stepped out of those social boundaries. They're irrelevant to us. We have our own social codes and boundaries, you know, which I think are stricter and far more stylish, myself personally.
Tell me about Mardi Gras.
Mardi Gras. Well, it was a big miss for me. I ended up having a motorbike accident. Sort of 2 weeks before Mardi Gras. So I didn't go on the original march. I was in hospital with my leg chopped off. Well, they'd sewed it back on again after the accident. And the second march, which was in the daytime, when they were bringing, after all the rest, and they were bringing the whole world press in on it. Well, I was in Ward 19 in St Denis, and the march actually came past, and I was known as Gina in those days. And they would be getting on the bullhorns calling out to me, but they didn't realise that the night before I'd refused all analgesics, and I was talking to the orthopaedic surgeon about them taking my leg off because I felt that it was dead. It was, 3 hours cut off before they sewed it back on, and I was in a shocking mess about, physically sick, reacting to everything. And I was sitting there crying, telling him, and he was agreeing that he felt that they had tried their best and it was probably better for me that they did remove it. And everyone didn't know that, and they were calling out, and they were running in through the ward throwing these gladioli on the bed, and I had this huge bed of gladioli, and I was telling the doctor to get my leg chopped off. So I myself personally feel very tied to Mardi Gras. I claim myself as being a 78er. So, yeah, even though I didn't get arrested or be on the original march, I was there.
And the gladiola, what do they mean?
Well, I think it's gladiola was very Australian flour, Dame Average, very camp flour, and it was, I can't remember who or how someone decided that gladiolas was the way to go, but I mean, when you think about it, Dame Edna Gladys, gay, very camp. So yeah, everyone carried gladiolas.
And what had happened to you in terms of Mardi Gras and being in hospital at that time? What other memories do you have from that?
Oh, as I said to you, the community was very small. And I had, 150, 200 women that come into intensive care saying they're my sister. And they had me on huge amounts of analgesics. And I would wake up and women would have pin notes all over my bed, and they'd come and give me healing. I was much loved. And I truly believe my acceptance of my amputation has to do with the love and the nurturing and the support I got from the women. Women would just come and put my hands down when I got out of hospital and rub my stump, and it'd be fine. We can all touch your stump, and we also at that point, the Dykes opened up a warehouse in Ultimo, and we used to have dances and functions there. By this time there was women's bands in Sydney, Sheila, I can't think of a few of them there, but, and women's action theatre. We used to do a lot of theatre, a lot of conscious political. Dykes used to do a lot of political conscious raising. We'd have political conscious raising groups where we would challenge each other. Why do you think that? What does that word mean to you? Why, you know? And so we would push each other to why our belief systems. That was also, I suppose, tied in with feminism, but no one forced us. There was no guns to our head. Like, it's something we all did. And I think it helped us evolve radically, you know.
Because looking at language was a really important part.
Yes.
Can you tell me about the language?
Language, that was really funny. It was when I first started connecting with these women, like IWD, I thought it was a contraception device, not because they just, you know, it's called it IWE, International Women's Day. And I didn't even know what polygamy or monogamy was. I used to go home and look at the dictionary, you know, because they just weren't words that, in general, you know, working class family in New Zealand, you'd even know what the hell the words were. And food, oh, that was a big one for me, coming into the Dyke, especially the radical lesbian feminists. They didn't eat meat, they became all vegetarians basically overnight, and ate tofu and tempura and carrot juice, and I was a girl that had porridge and bacon and eggs and toast and a cup of tea. It was like a total alien food trip for me, I don't tell you. But anyway, I survived it. It was really funny. My first night at the Cricketers' Arms was even funnier too. Hazel and Christine went to the toilet, and I'll never forget it because the woman, she had a lot of really bad acne scar, and she came up to the bar and that she said to me, "Which one are you on with?" And I said, "Both of them." She said, "Well, you're a fucking lucky cunt, aren't you?" And walked off. They came back from the toilet, and I said, "We're going home." That was my first night at the Cricketers' Arms. But that was those women, particularly that woman, was still that core of women that was Clover Women's Club. They were more the good girls, the more conservative type. That's what I mean by good girls, more conservative, not as radical as us.
Private school.
Pardon?
Private school.
No, Clover Women's Club. It's a business women's club
in
Sydney. It's still going, as far as I know. And yeah, and there's also, like, even today, a group of women that run dances that wouldn't let us in. It's invitation only, and it's more conservative type lesbians that they're a bit nervous at leather girls or a bit edgy girls. And it's interesting, a lot of those girls from my early part have developed and have more been attracted to the queer side of our culture than the more radical political side. Mind you, queer's pretty politically radical anyway.
The other thing that occurs to me is you talked about that you girls met in the small women's only section. They were in the days when drinking was segregated. That came when you were going to pubs. You know how there was women's sections in bars?
Definitely, that would have also been a residue of the heterosexual women in the parlour. It was a women's parlour, and you know, you see the couple of movies, Australian movies, where the women used to shell the peas there in the afternoon, and that whole bar is still there, as far as I know, has that energy, had totally that energy, and I never stepped a foot in that other side that whole time, never. It was like they were them and we were us. I've learned more in the last 4 years of my life about gay guys than I have in all of these years. Duncan's given me quite an education.
During the 70s, before you went to Women's Land, tell me some of the things that did you want to light up a ciggy and have a second to light up a ciggy, or?
I'm right, but you don't mind if I smoke?
No, you can smoke. You can light up whenever you like. That's all cool. We talked a bit about Mardi Gras. What are some of the other things around that time?
Within the women's scene?
All your memories.
Well, I can remember a couple of coalition dances we had, which ended up in brawls. I remember Fiona Arnold grabbing a very big, large ashtray out of her hand. It was very difficult because the difference between us and our different needs, and I think that gay and lesbian culture, well, particularly I've noticed with Tropical Fruits and what we do with that and how we merge that and the awareness and the acceptance of our differences. In those early days, everybody was the enemy, you know, and I also think that in those early days, I mean, I can't, don't quote me because it's my thoughts. I could imagine that the boys also went through an identification stage of being absolutely immersed in their world. It's like being, as I said, in a drought, and suddenly you found a beautiful fresh pond. And it was like that. It was easy. Once you stepped away from the mainstream of life and conditions, it was very easy just to stay in our world. You know, it was fun. It was everything you wanted. It was your soul was calling for it, and it made working in that world bearable because it was only 8 hours, and you could go back to your world. And I managed to actually live most of my adult, since pubescence, basically within gay and lesbian culture. I find it, the few times I've gone to a heterosexual pub, last time was in Byron, I had my tits squeezed, and I'm quite happy in our culture. It suits me.
Women's Land.
Women's Land, in the mid-70s, a group of women started this in Melbourne, actually, and a woman called Karen Hicks was part of this group, and she went on a little journey, and she travelled up as far as she said she could, where it was hot, where she couldn't, it was not as hot as she could bear, she said. Any further north would have been too hot. And she went to a real estate, and they took her and showed her a piece of land which was 1,000 acres, 3,000 feet up, and it's the whole top of the mountain. And so that group of women started to purchase that. It's known as Amazon Acres. They actually call it Firestone Farm. And what happened, and this is this stuff once again of our culture developing and the network system that our culture has. We don't need newspapers or telephones, I tell you, it's amazing. And it wasn't very long before word went out literally across the globe about the Women's Land and Amazon Acres particularly. By this time I had moved up there, and I was part of a group that bought Bracken Women's Land, which is 358 acres, which is 2 valleys over from the mountain. A day's horse ride. You could walk, but it's a day's horse ride.
Where is it?
Near, out of, in the foothills of the Great Dividing Range, west of Wauchope, basically, west, north and south of Wauchope, which is near Port Macquarie, yeah. And beautiful, beautiful, dense old growth rainforest. And we got inundated, for the want of a better word, from women from all over the world. I mean, there was a point, the people in Wauchope we had an amazing transition through there. When we first went there, like, some people were nice to us. We could stand in the shop and they would serve everybody who came in after you, getting more embarrassed and more angry and more red because of the situation they were putting themselves in, until they finally could not serve anyone else but you, and then they would dump all of that on us. It changed over a period of time. I'm sure there's still people in Wauchope that are ninganari about it, but at one point there was nearly 300 women living between it and the lands, because then we bought the valley, which is 600 acres, which is sort of down into the valley from the mountain, and then 1,000 acres behind the mountain. So all up, I think we've got 3,500 acres between us. And yeah, and I mean, now, and then we got a couple of situations happen where Rupert Murdoch sent a couple of women from England they were, and they portrayed themselves as being dykes from England, and they were travelling around and they looked like us, and there was no reason for us to disbelieve them, and that they worked for a women's magazine in London. And next thing, we were the centre page, portrayed as the Modern Australian Amazon, right across the spread of London Daily Times here in Australia. That's happened to us about 3 times.
What year?
Oh, now you're pushing it. The first would have been in the early 80s, probably about 82. And you know, we've had Mike Willisey ringing us up trying to come and do women's film crew. I'd say to him, give us 250,000, we'll give you a story you can't print. But you know,
how did Murdoch represent you?
Oh, mythology, total mythology, that we sent our girls to exclusive girl boarding schools, and we gave our boy children to Puftas to rear. All sorts of mythology. Our young girls that we did rear, and we did rear quite a few children on the Women's Land, feel quite pissed off that they never got to go to the boarding school. They often give us a rib about it. But, you know, they have their story and their journey too. It must have been hell for them sometimes, with all these vegetarian, feral women running around riding horses all over the place. But, you know, they love us. They still talk to us. Going down to Sydney, they'll still walk up and give you a big cuddle and a kiss. I love them to bits. I think they're gorgeous. They're all young women now, having babies themselves. But yeah, it wasn't easy, but now people in town in Moorhope call us their girls, and I think they just thought we'd grow out. But we made a difference, an economic difference to Moorhope. We brought a lot of money. We did all our shopping in Moorhope, and when Centrelink started bringing down much stricter rules about people not having access to phones and that, there needed to be a mass exodus from the land because they just cut off everybody's income. And it was at a time, I think, when movement, as it does, was about to happen anyway, and women went back and finished degrees and did all sorts of things, you know, and they still come back to the land. There's not as many women living on the lands now as there was then.
Originally, how did it start? What was the idea? What was the model?
Well, different women will say different things, what it was for them. For me, it was because I had just met. We used to have these women's festivals, the Minto party grounds, once a year, just after Christmas. And we'd all just gather and sing and do workshops and concert raising and hang out and, you know. I met the women from the mountain there the first time, and it was just before Mardi Gras when I met them in 78, 77. And that's what started me when I had my accident, that I was going to take the compensation money and buy land. And it happened in America too, and not so much in England, but women did squat at Green and Common. I think it was something about our place, creating our place. It was our space. Even now, I know I can go back to the lands. I have a place on it that I built, and if all else fails in the world, I've got the women's land to go back to. And I think tribal people used to have that once upon a time. If they went out into the world and chased polar bears, but they knew they could go home because there was a home to go to. Yeah, I think it was just that, you know, like people who get together, they buy a house. Well, we all got together and we bought land. You know, I think it was that. I think it was a place of our own.
And after women's land, what happened next?
For me, I moved up to Lismore 5 years ago. I stayed on the women's land. I did have a period of time from 90 to 93 where I went back down to Sydney and got my second child, a surrogate situation, and I went down there and waited for her birth, and then came back up to Moorhope for a year, and then I moved up here for 5 years ago.
And Tropical Fruits?
Well, I first went to my first Tropical Fruits in 98. I wasn't living here then, and I was living in Moorhope still, and I had such a great time. I had a wonderful time, and I think I came back. No, I was moved here by the following year. I'd moved by the following year to Lismore, and I'd already done a work crew on a few of the small parties before the second new year. And it was after the second new year when Tropical Fruits had its problems and had a takeover bid by Tribal Fruits, and the committee had a bit of a hiccup, and that's in February 92 I got on committee. So yeah, that's about right.
And where's Tropical Fruits today?
Tropical Fruits, after 16 years of going, and Tropical Fruits hasn't just happened. Tropical Fruits has evolved over 16 years by a lot of very talented, very dedicated people. I think Tropical Fruits is where it is today because it provides our community and our culture with a place that's totally gay, totally camp, and we're very healthy today. We've moved into this great new space, which we've got a 3-year lease on. We have great plans in stock for what we're doing with the community. We're putting broadband in, computers for people to use. We've got now an arts and welfare budget where people can apply for anything from money for barbecues for people to art supplies if that's what they need. It's very rare that a community group like this has access to the money that Tropical Fruits generates. Our parties, I believe, are really, really important to us because heterosexuals, they have this system set up where their kids go to primary school or preschool, or they meet the women, the friends there. They start having social interaction, going to barbecues, school things, school functions. Then it goes on to the football, and you know, and it evolves that way. They have a format. Even though we have more children in our culture now than we've ever had, our dances are our social interaction. This is where, and with like New Year, particularly trying to bring in new things like the art. We chess, snakes and ladders, pencils, paper on the table. We're trying to create more than just a dance party where you arrive, take drugs, get off your face, dance all night and leave. We've brought barbecue in so it gives more time to converse and interrelate. And all those people you've seen for the last 6 years that are coming, that you might go, hi, I've seen you for the last 6 years, what's your name, you know? And it was very popular, and from the people that are ticking to go to the barbecue this year, it's showing that in fact it's word spread.
And it is an incredible convergence of sort of country, coastal and city tropical fruits. It's a very interesting...
It's a big mix. We've got everybody here from Muscle Marys, Michaels, Puffs, Femme, Butch, both gay boy, gay girl, femme, you name it, transgender, asexual. We've got a large community here, and we seem to manage to party quite fine with looking after and being aware of each other's needs. You know, the girls, of course, we'd love to be able to have a party where 95% was girls and not boys, but you know, there's more girls coming as word goes out.
Indigenous communities?
Yep. We'd have, well, I can remember 3 years ago at a party, a whole mob turned up and they came into the women's space. Hey, Tedda, come on in here, you know. It's, you know, you could bring your grandmother to a Tropical Fruits event and have a great time, you know. We do have straight friends come, but they are different to sort of that Sydney younger yuppie crew that are looking for an avenue and a venue where they can just be something that they can't be in their own world. I'd like them to learn to be like that in their own world, or at least let us come into their world and just be ourselves. Do you know what I mean? It's something that really irks me a little. Not that I object to them being there, but it's this false sense of that we give them permission to, or they think we give them permission to behave in a certain manner that's not necessarily us.
Feral energy was a great expression that you used yesterday.
Feral energy, yeah. We were feral, we still are, I still am.
And what does that mean?
Feral energy, I think it tied up to that, what I was saying to you about angry women. We came out and it was like, I suppose the best way I could describe it without it being too crazy is that, you know, when you are pressed to hold something down long enough, it will go, and women have potential of great anger, you know, like a mother protecting a child. I think metaphors, you know, like I think the potential of that meek and mild woman that was portrayed for years got totally blown out of the water through the 70s, and just the potential of an unsuppressed woman to stand up and say, get fucked, this isn't happening. And I think, as I said to you, I think that whole awareness of that collective awareness of that joining together, you know, like women, young women, if they all in boarding school end up menstruating together, like we have an attunement that is quite tangible, and I believe that is the tangible collective consciousness that brought us all together and sent us off on these roads of war, basically.
And all, you know, and menstruation, there's also like this, you know, there's like a dominant, in a group of women, there's like this blood cycles follow. Yep. Hormonal.
They certainly do, and they will follow the harmony of the group. If the group suddenly goes out, and girlfriends will tell you that, the best sign to know if you're in harmony with your girlfriends, when how you're bleeding together. And I have a lot of personal beliefs about that instinctive self that we're going to find out in the next 20 years. You know, I have a huge belief system in that we don't credit the amount of influence that our instinctive chemical bodies influence upon us. And I think that feral energy that you're talking about came out of all of this. It was like something got opened and triggered and out, and there was no way we were going to go back in, and we were going to fight for it, you know, fight for the rights to choose. Not the women, not the state, no, not the church, not the state. Women must decide their fate. That was another war cry. We would call, there was lots, take the toys from the boys, I could tell you lots and lots of songs we used to sing.
What's another one that comes to mind?
Let me just have to think of it for a minute. I have to get you some songs. I could get you some written down.
Yeah, what was that one you sang yesterday?
Be you singer, be you singer, be you dancer. If you're a woman, that's the answer. That's Judy Small wrote a lot of songs for the marches. She'd write us new songs for the marches. Pretty much every march. She did some amazing. One song I can remember her singing, and she dug it out of God knows where. It was something like a 17th, 16th century lament, and it had no music to it. And I can't remember all the words, but it was about this person coming along the road and finding an old woman sitting beside the road, and she was dying, and she knew she was dying. But it dawned on her that she had spent her whole life cleaning dirt out of the house, and they were about to bury her under 6 feet of dirt. And the irony of it is in this song, and the chorus goes, and life's a trial, and love's a trouble, and beauty it fades, and riches they flee, pleasures they dwindle, and prices they double, and nothing is as I would wish it to be. Pretty funny that hasn't changed.
That's right, things haven't changed sometimes. Does it feel like that? Does it feel like there's been lots of struggles and sometimes things haven't changed?
I think that we live a very fine line. I think the righteous right could come out of the ugly cupboard any day. I think we're not as safe as we believe we are. I think that we're tolerated because we bring money. I think that, say for example, like with Tropical Fruits, I'm sure if the council and the people in town had a choice, they would prefer something extremely heterosexual that was bringing in the money that we do and the trade into town that we do for New Year. We book every single hotel and motel out in Lismore, and it spills over to Byron and Ballina. And that was traditionally a time when Lismore was dead.
What sort of money are we talking?
We're talking $3 million a year we bring into Lismore over the parties.
It's a lot of tourism.
That is a lot of tourism, and it's not just to Lismore. I mean, people that come, especially from overseas and that for the parties, they continue on up the coast. They go to Byron, and so it's an influence, a financial influence that's much further. And we have no problems. If you talk to the police here, they find our parties breeze. They have no problems. They come and check. They leave us alone because we don't have problems. We've never, I've never had. And this New Year will be the 17th party I've put on, and I've never seen a situation that was what you would refer to be as ugly.
Economically, I really want to pick up on what you were saying yesterday about the economic theory that you had in terms of the impact women have made on women's healthcare, understanding of care.
Lesbian women, dykes, yes, I have a, I don't have a belief, I was there, I watched it happen, and I know women that are still involved in Canberra. And just gay and lesbian people within the health system anyway, I know for a fact that Australian lesbian women were very, very actively involved in influencing the path and the nature of our public health system as we know it today. Australia, even with AIDS, we lead the world with care and public awareness in all those areas. I can remember in 1980 going over, and in those days we had interpretation, you could have different cultures, interpreters and stuff like that. And being in France and finding it so difficult not even to find anything in English in France. And here we were way in the back and we were doing all of this stuff. And that was very, very, as I said, very influenced by dykes in Sydney and Melbourne, I don't think that it happened in the same in other countries. I don't think, look at America, it still doesn't have anything like Mardi Gras. Where you can walk bare-breasted down the main street of Sydney and have a great time. But I still think that is, they can yell, "We love you," from the sidelines, but they wouldn't necessarily take us home.
I go back to, Glebe and what was happening then with women's rape crisis and things like that.
Glebe, it was Elsie's Women's Refuge was the first one in Glebe. Rape crisis was actually up off, get this right, Street, Cleveland. First rape crisis was on Cleveland Street. Elsie's was part of the Department of Main Road block that they'd bought out. It was down near the Scots, and a group of women. I couldn't tell her names because I should ask permission. She'd notify Dolly. But Chris Mellor, there was Anne Summers. There was a lot of really, really amazing, strong women, and went on the FM radio station, and by the next lunchtime we had more women and children than anyone knew what to do with. We didn't have bedding, we didn't have food, we didn't have clothing, and there were so many women. We had to squat the next house next to it, and the government member parliament came to talk to us about funding because it became an embarrassment. And I mean, here we were with all these women being beaten and raped and abused, and they just turned up from everywhere. It was unbelievable. And one of the women wouldn't let him in and told him to piss off and sent him away, and one of the other workers had to run down and get him, and that's how we got the first funding for Elsie's Women's Refuge, which I think is probably one of the first government fundings of that nature in history, actually.
Let's talk a little bit about the future, because we're coming to the end of the tape. We're talking about some of the differences today. I mean, a lot's happened in terms of New Mardi Gras, the changes to New Mardi Gras in the last couple of years. That's still finding its feet. And we're talking specifically about the things that Tropical Fruits offer that are very different to elsewhere in Australia. The Melbourne parties have subsided. It's almost like the flame's gone out there. Brisbane still has the Queen's Ball once a year, which has been going, I think it's the oldest game has been an event in Australia, and probably in the world. Let's talk a little bit about some of the differences that Tropical Fruits offers.
Well, I think Tropical Fruits mainly offers, because we don't have, well, we had the Winston for a while, but this area, Tropical Fruits started by a group of gay and lesbian people who wanted social. And so what they used to do is they used to all put money and have it at people's houses. And then it got too big for houses, and then they moved to halls. And then the last New Year's Eve party they had in Repentance Creek Hall, they had 900 people there, way too many people, and that's when it first moved to the tents in the rugby ground. And I think Tropical Fruits, and we've moved from there to the showground, this is our second year, because of the noise pollution of the takeover bit of a group called Tropical Fruits a couple of years ago. But I think Tropical Fruits maintains its vigour because we don't have clubs to go to every weekend. So the 4 or 5 parties that we do besides New Year is a big event for us. It's a large, I mean, Lismore has the largest gay and lesbian population outside of a metropolitan Southern Hemisphere, and growing. So we do need, it's that basic need once again for us to be with our own mob. And myself personally, my personal agenda with Tropical Fruits is to see it healthy, see it survive into the future, see it economically. I was quite surprised to find that we didn't own a building as far as Mardi Gras goes. I'm totally supportive of New Mardi Gras. I think they're very brave people and they're very dedicated people, and I think it's a wonderful thing that they've seen that we need to have Mardi Gras and that we would miss it if it wasn't there. I hope that they're not letting sponsors eat the hell out of them again, like what happened to Old Mardi Gras. That's something that I'm very aware of here. And I'd like to see us buy land. I've got a dream about 2 swimming pools with a slippery dip between them. But, you know, that'll obviously, you know, depends on what the whole membership wants. But, you know, I think that having our own place would be a great thing. But besides that, keeping it healthy, keeping it wealthy, and keeping it wise.
And a part of that is also keeping it sexual.
Yes,
Let's talk
exactly
about that.
Right. Well, because we don't have any sponsors, we don't have to worry about our image to anybody. That's something that is very powerful, that we maintain that right to have our own image. And we hire our own security, and we hire a security company that hires a lot of gay people. Our staff, the people who do the work crew, are local people and visitors if they want to work for their ticket. As long as I'm involved, I'd like to keep that as is, status quo. And that enables us to be who we wish and how we wish to express ourselves in every aspect of it, whether it be dress, whether it be how we display our sexuality, whatever. That's something that we must maintain our right. I mean, everyone else has their right to do what they like within their own culture, and we should have that right too. You know, we shouldn't be living under somebody else's laws to say that this can't happen and the boys can't do what the boys want to do. That's the nature of who they are, you know, and we accept that. you know, and it's like the boys laugh about us with the girls' tent. What do you girls do in there? Eat chocolate and talk, you know, like, it's quite fascinates them that we put a tent up for it, but you know, that's the way it goes. And I mean, you know, our girls' tent's never exclusive girls. It's sort of flowy, people come in there and, you know, we've talked about having some wicked shows and that, but, you know, that may or may not eventuate. But it's not a big thing for girls to get in tents and do group groups. But, you know, we accept that too.
The boys?
The boy, definitely. Definitely. You know, like, and I think this is something that, it's a difficult situation because we can't legally own it because we would lose the right to have our bar licence. But we are aware, and we do practice harm minimisation with ACON and safe sex lights and stuff like that. But I mean, I personally have no problems whatsoever as a dyke, knowing that my brothers are doing what they're doing and how they're doing it and why they like doing it and what have you. That's their trip, and as long as they're happy doing their trip and it's for who they are, I don't have a problem at all.
Crystal meth is in the media a lot these days,
Yes.
and it seems to be the new heroin or the new drug of
Ice.
choice, the new ice, the new crack, the new whatever.
Yeah.
What is Tropical Fruits doing about harm minimisation, understanding?
Well, we
education?
have, I do drug roving and safe sex clubbing down in Sydney. We're actually this year have contacted ACON, and we're hopefully having a whole drug roving education system. And it's been very interesting on my journey with that because I've discovered that even St John's Ambulance here have no awareness of GBH and ICE, etc., and the consequences of. And so they're going to come to the teaching day as well, so it's been quite an interesting thing. We bring our security in on that as well, but we also have a very strict policy that we ship them out. If someone's going to be stupid enough to OD, then we send them straight to the hospital. No keeping. We don't run a mass unit like Mardi Gras does. We don't intend to ever run a mass unit like that because it's not what our party's about, you know, like. It's about people being responsible and taking responsibility for themselves. If you set up a situation like it is at Mardi Gras, people will take no responsibility. Oh, it'll be fine, I'll take this, and if I drop, they'll look after me, you know?
The Winsome was an interesting little
It was.
event horizon in Lismore.
It was good and it was bad. It was good because it provided us somewhere to go, just to go and hang out. This is where I think this clubhouse hopefully is going to have a role in that missing link. Bad insofar that there was alcohol. It was, you know, you went there was alcohol. I used to nag Laurie to death for a cup of tea, but bad insofar that it was there, now it's gone, and we miss it. We miss having a place to go, you know.
What happened at the Winsome? Just give me
The Winsome, I think what happened at first was a woman called Sue, who, a straight woman, came and bought it, the lease on it, and she made it known to the gay and lesbian community that she'd welcome us. And it was at the time of a great chill. Lesbians go through a 2 or 3 year cycle and there's massive breaks up, and my friend Vic calls it rootin' season. And that was a time, she picked the timing. If she could have picked the timing, the woman picked it right. It was a time when there was a lot of transient women here, and the Winsome was pumping. It was pumping, I can tell you. It was going off. But when she sold the lease to Laurie, I think, came with a lot of Sydney attitude and sacked, or didn't give the couple of dykes that were working behind the bar shifts, and they would ignore us. The dykes would stand there and they would literally serve all the boys, and so we just stopped going. So the first thing that happened is the dykes stopped going, and for about nearly 2 years the dykes didn't go. And then we used to have our own little dances around the place, and then a couple of dykes took up doing the cafe there again, and we all went back. But things didn't improve. By this time the boys' population was in trouble, and there was more boys banned from the pub and their friends banned, and it just ended up not working. People just stopped going, and I think it was a management thing.
Let's just talk briefly at the end. We've got 3 minutes. The demographic. there's a population, the word transient's come in the last few sentences, and you talked about how Lismore has a very strong gay and lesbian population. Let's talk about what the demographic is. There's obviously people that are locals. There's a sustainable culture in terms of gay and lesbians that have grown up in this area,
Yes, there is.
as well as this sea changer thing.
We get a lot of people from Brisbane come to our dances because it's popular, because it's got a particular flavour. In a 25-minute radius of Lismore, you've got a lot of little satellite towns, so it's quite big, really. Coffs Harbour, people come up from that. We have a lot to do with coastal links down there. We have connections with them. So yeah, it's Tropical Fruits has a large community relying on it to provide social interaction.
And Sydney and Melbourne people?
Yep, Melbourne this year, huge contingent stimulated from Melbourne for the new year this year. Sydney always, big Sydney mob comes. Hawaii, London, and we have one New Zealand guy who has come every Tropical Fruits New Year for a really long time. So, people, it's becoming tradition, it's got tradition, Tropical Fruits.
How fruity is it?
Very. It's delicious. Kath Duncan describes it as jumping in a bowl of mashed mangoes. So, I think it is the combination of all different facets of our community coming together under the one umbrella, basically, and having a really nice time.
And the slippery dips?
The slippery dips. The pool.
The slippery dip between.
Oh, yeah. I've got a great fantasy about that. Look, Weaver Webb, that's how we bought the women's land. I think we need to buy land. It seems to be sensible to me that we buy land. In 10 years, 15 years' time, gay and lesbian people are going to find it very hard to find areas and places to be who we are. We don't know. We've got no idea what the future will bring. Whether moral right makes it so that we have to go back under and that we can't have access to money. That's why we must look after everything we get now.
And then with the Howard government for another term?
Oh, terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. But, we're bolder, brighter and stronger. We've survived many years and thousands of years in oppression, so... I often wonder what it would have been like in the 17th century for someone who was gay. Working class gay. I'm not talking about privileged gay that can hire. I'm talking about the working class. And I think that's what came out of the cupboard in the 60s. Big time was the working class edge that was suppressed and couldn't financially live independent lives. I think, especially with women anyway. I think that was a big one.
Thank you, Erif. That's fantastic. That's perfect. We covered a lot of territory in that hour. Absolutely.
What a great story. Wow.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was terrific.
So,
I kept driving it. I knew that you had more to talk about, but I
Yeah,
found
you get a blank when we sat sitting at you. I can sit here stoned and rage. You should have got me stoned. I should have got stoned. I'd have raved for days.
Well, we'll do that next
clear
time.
and
It was very succinct.
powerful. I was thinking to myself, I don't